After our daughter Lauren paid for a villa for Levi and me, something in him changed. The man who had been steady and gentle for decades suddenly became irritable, critical, then out of nowhere asked for a divorce. The truth? He'd been planning this for a while. He wanted to spend his twilight years with a younger woman. He thought I was clueless. I looked him in the eye, my voice calm. If you want a divorce, fine. But you're not getting a penny from this house. Levi's smirk practically carved itself into his face. The house was a gift from Lauren, he said confidently. It's a symbol of love, protected by law. Why shouldn't I get a share? So he'd done his homework. Talked to a lawyer. Made sure he had legal grounds to fight for it. Well then, if he wanted to play that game, so be it. I didn't need to be polite anymore. What he didn't know was, I had my own plan. A secret that would ruin him if I chose to use it. Back when I first sensed something was off, I was in the kitchen making dinner. Levi was sprawled across the couch, casually flipping the deed in his hands like it was a lottery ticket. He turned to me with a smug little smile. You probably didn't realize it, but if I hadn't nudged Lauren about the real estate market dipping, she never would have bought this place so soon. He chuckled, shaking his head. But you wouldn't understand that stuff. You're always too busy with pots and pans. I kept chopping carrots, saying nothing. What he didn't know was Lauren had come to me weeks before buying the house. She asked what I thought, worried it might be too far for me to feel at home. This wasn't about property values, it was about love. She bought the house because she wanted her parents to have peace in their later years. But I didn't correct Levi. As long as our daughter was happy and the family looked whole from the outside, I could let the small lies slide. Levi didn't say anything more. He got up and went to the bedroom. Later, when dinner was ready, I went to call him. He was already asleep, stretched out on the bed. The property deed had fallen to the floor. It lay there, stark and out of place, like a warning. I walked over, gently pulled the blanket up over him, and that's when I saw it. His phone lit up beside the bed. On the screen, Levi, your order is out for delivery. Women's luxury lace lingerie. Price, $79.99. It felt like a lightning bolt straight to the chest. I'm allergic to lace. He's known that for decades. There were tiny cuts on my fingers from prepping dinner. But my heart was what really felt shredded, lying there in pieces too small to gather. Levi had always been the frugal one. Retired engineering professor, borderline stingy. We kept separate finances. He gave me $1,200 a month for groceries and basic expenses. The rest he managed himself. But in 20+ years of marriage, he never made a purchase. Any purchase, without at least mentioning it to me. Even a hand towel. A pair of slippers. So buying lingerie and lace at that wasn't just out of character. It was a confession. My stomach dropped. The kind of drop you feel when you fall through thin ice in a dead silent winter. I looked at him again, sleeping peacefully, his breathing even, not a hint of guilt on that aging but oddly youthful face. Retirement had done wonders for him. He looked like a man in his 40s, not someone 2 years into retirement. Me. I was no longer the composed, graceful Ms. Chin from the lecture hall. I smelled like garlic and frying oil. I'd become the woman behind the kitchen door. A quiet dread crept in. Something was coming, I could feel it. I took a deep breath and picked up his phone, tapping into the shopping app's pending shipments. Empty. The order history, cleared. Messages, wiped clean. He'd deleted everything. If he hadn't been too tired to lock his phone that night, I would have never seen the order at all. My stomach tightened, but I didn't confront him right away. I stayed quiet for 3 days. Then one evening, as casually as if I were commenting on the weather, I said, I was thinking about getting a new nightgown. It's been so cold at night lately. Levi was leaning back on the couch reading a financial magazine. The second he heard me, his head snapped up, eyes sharp as glass. You went through my phone? 5 words. Like a gavel slamming down in a courtroom. I hadn't even accused him of anything yet, and he'd already put me on trial. Anger ignited in my chest, but I didn't let it explode. I set the mop down in the corner, turned to him slowly and said in a cold, measured voice, your phone wasn't locked. I just happened to see the order screen. I thought, naively, that he might explain himself. That he'd offer some half-hearted excuse. Even a lousy, I ordered it by mistake, would have been something. But no. Instead he scoffed, dismissive, defensive. His voice rising like he was scolding a child in one of his lectures. Grace Mitchell, are you seriously acting like a jealous teenager? Snooping through someone's phone, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Just because it wasn't locked doesn't give you the right to invade my privacy. The mask had come off. The gentleman act was gone. Funny really, this was the same man who once puffed out his chest and said, "I don't keep secrets from you. My phone's an open book." I didn't bother arguing. I walked over to the couch, sat down and let him put on his little show. That only made him angrier. In a sudden burst of fury, he swept all the books and papers off the desk. The loud crash rang out like a starter pistol in a race to the bottom. "You don't trust me? Fine. Let's get a divorce. There, you happy now? Divorce." I blinked. And then I laughed. Levi wasn't the type to throw things, not without purpose. This wasn't an outburst. This was strategy. He didn't want a fight. He wanted an exit. I looked down at the chaos on the floor, papers scattered like dead leaves, and felt nothing but bone-deep exhaustion. No rage. No sadness. Just the kind of fatigue that seeps into your soul when something quietly breaks. The man I married, the warm, sharp-witted professor with a soft laugh, had been replaced by a stranger with a twisted snarl. And then he did something that stunned me even more. He picked up his phone and called Lauren. He told her to come home immediately. That night, Lauren burst through the front door, jacket still on, worry written all over her face. "Mom, what's going on? You two never fight. And now you're talking about divorce." "Yeah. Because men like Levi can only handle so much peace and quiet before they start craving chaos to feel alive again." I didn't go into detail. Just told her the truth, plain and simple. About the lace lingerie. About Levi's pathetic excuses. After I finished, Lauren pulled me into the bedroom, closed the door and whispered, "Mom, aren't you overreacting? You're blowing this whole thing up over one piece of lingerie." Her tone had a strange edge to it. Mild confusion, maybe even a hint of blame. Like I was the one being unreasonable. "Dad's a professor," she continued. "He's always been so careful with his reputation. He wouldn't do something inappropriate. Maybe he forgot you're allergic to lace. Maybe the package was delayed. Or maybe he returned it." She said it calmly. Rationally. Like a grown-up reasoning with a child. But each word hit me like cold water dumped straight onto my chest. I shivered, not from the cold but from something worse. Something sharp and invisible. Disappointment. My own daughter thought I was the one making a fuss. Over just a nightgown? I stared at her, this girl I'd raised, protected, adored. Suddenly her face felt unfamiliar. Like I was looking at a stranger. And then, like a dam bursting, the memories came flooding back. When Lauren was little, Levi used to sneak her candy behind my back. She'd eat until her mouth was coated in sugar, her teeth practically glowing with it. I told Levi more than once, it was bad for her teeth. That she'd regret it later. But he'd always wave me off, laughing. "She's a kid, Grace. Let her enjoy life. A little sugar never hurt anyone." By the time she was in middle school, nearly every tooth had cavities. He hated smiling in pictures. He never saw the harm. But I did. And now once again I was the bad guy for noticing. "You want a divorce? Fine. But let's be clear. This house was paid for entirely by Lauren. If we separate, it goes back to her. Levi and I only have one child, Lauren. She bought this house because she was worried about what would happen to us in old age if something went wrong in our marriage. She emptied all of her premarital savings to give us this home. It was her way of giving us security. A responsibility she felt she owed. Before signing the purchase agreement, Lauren asked for my opinion. I hesitated at first, worried her in-laws might come after her money. But eventually I agreed. I glanced at Levi. His face had drained of color, lips tight, eyes shifty. Lauren never told him the details of how the house was paid for. But knowing Levi, he'd probably figured it out long ago. His face turned red. He jabbed a finger in my direction, raising his voice until it cracked. "This house was a gift from our daughter. I'm her father. Why shouldn't I get half?" He wasn't just angry. He was seething, almost howling with rage and indignation. My heart sank. I turned to Lauren, my voice calm but full of quiet disappointment. "Look closely. This is the man you've always trusted." Lauren's eyes darted between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something heavier, doubt. Cracks were beginning to form in the picture-perfect image of her father she'd carried since childhood. It broke my heart. But Levi? He just stood there with his hands in his pockets like a disinterested bystander. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed into the kitchen, grabbed the mop, and marched back toward him. Get out. This house belongs to Lauren. You want a divorce? Then let's make it clean. I pushed him toward the door and he stumbled, nearly falling. His face flushed, voice trembling with rage, he spat out. Grace Mitchell, you hypocritical lunatic. Don't you know anything about the law? My name is on the deed. You can't just say I get nothing. I drew in a long breath and slammed the door in his face. Then I turned and pulled Lauren into her room, shutting the door behind us. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed with red. I stared into them, searching for the right words. And then I told her the truth. Your father. He betrayed this family. I found proof. He's having an affair. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Infidelity doesn't change much. At best, he leaves with nothing. But the house you bought. Before I could finish, Lauren's head jerked up. Her voice trembled, her face wet with tears. Mom, the house is under both your names. If you divorce, doesn't that mean it gets split 50-50? I nodded slowly. Exactly. That's why he's been picking fights. He's been planning this. Lauren wiped her face and clenched her jaw, then grabbed her phone and dialed. Vanessa Lee, she muttered. An old high school friend of hers. Now a junior associate at a law firm in New York. Someone with at least a working knowledge of property law. The next day Lauren and I met Vanessa at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Vanessa sat down, looked around warily, and cleared her throat before speaking in a low voice. Legally speaking, once a child gifts property to their parents, it's almost impossible to take it back. Lauren frowned. But I read somewhere that a gift can be revoked. Doesn't it depend on the circumstances? She was getting visibly anxious. I bought this house so my parents would have a stable place to live as they age. If something happens financially and I need to sell it, shouldn't that count as a reasonable cause? Vanessa softened her tone, glancing at Lauren. I get where you're coming from. But the problem is, this looks like an unconditional one-way gift. No strings attached. I chimed in. But I saw a news story just days ago. Parents bought their son a house, then he turned around and treated them horribly. They got the house back. Why can't we? Vanessa sighed. Her expression grew even more serious. That only worked because there was a formal gift agreement in place. It stated explicitly, the property transfer is conditional upon the giver's continued willingness. There was an observation period. If the giver changed their mind during that time, they could rescind it. But you didn't include any conditions, Vanessa said gently. No contract, no memorandum, just a wire transfer and a signed deed. In the eyes of the court, that's an unconditional gift, which means it can't be revoked. Lauren and I exchanged a look, like the air had been let out of us both. She bit her lip, her face pale. We both understood. In the eyes of the law, her generosity had become a weapon against her. A reward for the one who least deserved it. It was her money, every cent of it, and now we were forced to watch someone like Levi walk away with half. And there was nothing we could do about it. Silence fell over the table. Then Vanessa leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. But there might be a way. It's a long shot, but you could try. Her eyes sharpened, like a door cracking open just enough to let in a sliver of light. Back home, I forced myself to stay composed. I made dinner for Lauren, watched her pick at her food, then poured myself a cup of coffee. The steam rose slowly, clouding the air in front of me, turning the room into a soft, hazy blur. Just as I was about to step back into the kitchen, Lauren came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Mom, I'm sorry about yesterday. I shouldn't have said those things. I hurt you. Her voice broke. I just didn't want to believe that Dad could actually throw away our family. That woman, she's just younger, that's all. Used to be young too. Why is he being so cruel? She sobbed like a child, her whole body shaking. My heart felt like it had been torn apart and wrung dry. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a burnt orange glow across the kitchen tiles. There was a time I found comfort in these evenings, stirring a pot on the stove while the light faded gently behind me. Those moments used to feel safe. Now that peace was gone. Shattered. I held her for a while, then gently asked, do you think Vanessa's idea might work? If Ethan files a suit, claiming you hid assets before marriage, we might be able to protect at least part of the house. Lauren pulled away slowly, sat down on the couch and stared at the floor for a long time. But that would put Ethan and me at odds, she said quietly, more to herself than to me. And once he's involved, the house won't be just mine anymore. Even if we win, it becomes joint marital property. She bit her lip again, eyes clouded with hesitation. Our marriage is good. Really good. But I don't want to give up everything I saved before we even met. I understood. Of course I did. She was only in her early 30s, bright, hopeful, and far too young to be dragged into this kind of mess. And yet here she was, fighting alongside me in a battle she never signed up for. Over the next few days she took a week off work. Her energy faded. She moved like her soul had been switched off. Even the TV hummed in the background like a machine with no signal. And Levi? He vanished. Didn't answer his phone. Ignored every text. It was like he was ghosting us, on purpose. Lauren started to panic. She wanted to believe he could be reasoned with. She sent him a message hoping something, anything, inside him still resembled a father. He replied with a single icy sentence. Even if your mom and I divorce, you'll always be my daughter. Then a long voice message followed. He droned on about how miserable he'd been, how this marriage had suffocated him, how he'd been holding back for years. I couldn't help but laugh. Holding back? From what? I never touched his paycheck. Never asked where he went. Never stopped him from going out, from networking, from teaching after retirement. Not once. Everyone said he married a saint. And now he had the audacity to call it repression. Lauren let out a long, tired sigh. Dad's made his choice, she said softly. No matter how much he talks, it doesn't undo the cheating. Maybe he still sees me as his daughter. But what happens when she starts pulling the strings? Her voice was quiet, but her words landed like needles. Before I could answer, she stood up and wiped her face dry. I'm taking you to Grandma's. I blinked. You're sure? Lauren gave a determined nod. Grandma would never want Dad to get a divorce. As biased as she is, there's no way she'd just sit back and watch him take the house I paid for. I didn't stop her. She wanted to try, let her. Some truths you have to face yourself, no matter how much they hurt. Only then do you really understand what people are made of. Grandma's front yard looked just the same as it always had. When we arrived, she was sitting in her old creaky rocking chair, eyes closed, soaking up the sun. She didn't so much as flinch when she saw us, not even a twitch of her eyelid. It wasn't until we explained why we were there that she slowly opened her eyes and turned them on Lauren. I'm too old for your father's business, she muttered. Whatever he does now, that's on him. Lauren had come hoping for some kind of backup. But that flicker of hope vanished from her face in an instant. Grandma, he's trying to steal the house I bought, just so he can play house with some other woman. Her voice cracked, trembling with anger and disbelief. The old woman sighed, irritated, as if this were all an inconvenience to her. Do you know how much money your father spent raising you? You got to grow up in a warm home because of him. Now you've bought him a house, it's just giving back. You shouldn't be trying to take it away now. When we walked out of that house, Lauren looked completely lost. Mom, why does she always take Dad's side? She asked quietly. I gave her a gentle pat on the back. Sweetheart, have you forgotten how she used to treat me? Lauren froze, then the color drained from her face, like she'd just remembered something she'd spent years trying to forget. Of course she remembered. To that woman I was never more than a womb on legs. Until Lauren was 10 years old, her grandmother never let up about having another baby. Pressure, guilt, passive-aggressive lectures. And now that Levi was threatening divorce, she'd probably be thrilled to see me thrown out. Who knows? Maybe she's already fantasizing about him remarrying some younger woman who could give her a new grandchild. And it wasn't just her. Levi's sister, his cousins, his old friends, not one of them would take my side. None of them wanted to get involved, and some of them were probably waiting to watch me get tossed out like garbage. Me. My parents are gone. My siblings. Well, a few might offer hollow words of sympathy. One or two might tell me to try and be the bigger person. But that's it. They wouldn't do anything else. This quiet cruelty, this apathy that lies beneath the surface of blood ties, is something Lauren hasn't yet learned to recognize. Over the next few days, Levi stayed in full silent treatment mode. No calls. No texts. No arguments. Nothing. Just that smug silence, like he was daring us to make the next move. He knew the law. I could see it in how he carried himself. He knew we'd spoken to lawyers. And he was banking on that knowledge. Banking on silence, on pressure, on time wearing us down. He thought we'd fold. Lauren was growing more anxious by the day. She was losing sleep, losing focus, trying to process how the father she once revered could so easily become this thing. Finally, one afternoon she broke. Ethan had called again, urging her to come home. She was running out of excuses. So before leaving, she turned to me with pleading eyes. "Mom, maybe we should just give Dad $50,000. That was supposed to be the budget for renovations, right? Maybe if we offer him that, we can convince him to sign the house over to you." My heart twisted. My daughter still believed she could negotiate. Still hadn't fully grasped how greedy, how calculated her father had become. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, eyes red and full of shame. "I know you have the proof he cheated. You could walk away clean. But I paid for that house. I can't stand the thought of it going to some stranger. This is all I've got." For someone as decent and trusting as her, even suggesting a financial solution was pushing her emotional limit. I told her to go back to work to rest her mind. I'd take it from here. That night, I lay in the bed Levi and I once shared, staring at the ceiling until dawn. I didn't tell Lauren the truth. Her plan? Useless. 50 grand wouldn't move him. Wouldn't even make him blink. The next morning, I got dressed with care, gray-blue dress, subtle perfume, light makeup. Today I wasn't going to argue. I was going to play my final card. And I knew exactly where to play it. At Rachel's office. Rachel is 15 years younger than Levi. After college, she stayed on as a lecturer at Newberry State University, teaching courses in cultural communication and sociolinguistics. Over the past few years, she frequently stopped by our house under the pretense of visiting former professors. Just a few days before Levi filed for divorce, she even sent me a text saying she wanted to check in on how the two of us were doing. No. Radio silence. Fine. If she won't come to me, I'll go to her. I reached out to a few former students who still taught at the university and got my hands on Rachel's class schedule for the semester. The next afternoon, I stood outside the main academic building waiting. She emerged in a beige tailored trench coat, her wavy hair cascading over her shoulders, makeup flawless, not a single line visible around her eyes. If I didn't know her age, I'd have guessed early 30s. Levi had certainly kept her well. The moment she spotted me, her face faltered for half a second. Then she recovered, putting on a professional smile as she clicked toward me in her stilettos. "Mrs. Mitchell? What a surprise. Visiting someone on campus." She reached out, clearly intending to shake my hand, nails polished a blinding red. I stepped back. Didn't hide the disgust on my face. I shook her off like she was something filthy that had landed on my skin. "I'm here for you. Half an hour from now, meet me at the cafe across from the campus gates. If you don't show up, let's just say, your job here might not stay as secure as you think." I paused. My tone was even, quiet, but every word landed like a brick dropped from a rooftop. "You know, plenty of my students still work here. And this face? It's not exactly unknown around campus." Rachel stood frozen, smile cracking like old paint. For a moment she didn't say a word. Then she forced a laugh. Tight, bitter. "Of course, Mrs. Mitchell." 30 minutes later she showed up right on time. She slid into the seat across from me, still pretending we were just two old acquaintances catching up. She chatted about the weather, the university's budget issues, the dean's upcoming retirement. I didn't indulge her games. "I'll make this quick," I said. "I know about you and Levi." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. 20-plus years in a lecture hall had trained my tone to command silence. Rachel took a slow sip of her coffee and blinked wide, innocent eyes. "Mrs. Mitchell, I don't know what you're implying." I gave her a cold once-over. She was beautiful, yes. Well-spoken. She had that polished glow of someone who knew how to navigate both the faculty lounge and a wine-tasting gala. But the more pristine someone looks, the more obscene their secrets tend to be. No wonder men like Levi, at that desperate age between youth and decay, fell so easily for that contrast. "Rachel, I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to snap you out of your fantasy. Levi's father passed away years ago. The only family he has left is an overbearing mother. When I gave birth to Lauren and told him I wasn't having more kids, his mother never forgave me. Never let anyone get close until her health failed. Then guess who was stuck taking care of everything? You think Levi will roll up his sleeves for her? Or will that job fall to you? Her eyes flickered just slightly. I pressed on. Have you really thought this through? You're 40. You ready to spend the next decade juggling his mother's prescriptions and mediating fights between him and his sister? The fake smile on her lips twitched, faded, and I saw it, the crack. So I pushed harder. Let's be more practical. Are you ready to pay for it all? Rachel blinked. I pulled out a folded sheet of paper, scribbled notes but enough to make a point. Levi's income? About $7,000 a month. Sounds decent, right? But $3,000 goes straight to nursing care for his mother. Add the money he funnels to his sister Donna, grown woman still mooching off her big brother. That's a nice little bill every month. I let my eyes sweep across her. The Gucci coat. The Prada bag. The Jimmy Choo ankle boots. She looked like someone who enjoyed living well. Very well. Tell me, Rachel. Are you ready to throw your wardrobe, your salary, your savings into a retirement fund for a man who won't even pay his own sister's rent on time? Her mouth tightened. For the first time she actually looked at me. Really looked. I leaned in, voice softer now. You're a woman. You know how hard it is to live freely with dignity in this world. If things were easier, you'd be married with kids by now. But you're not, because somewhere inside you know what that costs. I held her gaze. Are you sure you want to pay that price for him? Rachel was never the kind of woman who sought peace, she was in it for the thrill. If she had shown up today in a simple outfit, no makeup, no polished veneer, maybe, just maybe, I'd have believed she truly loved Levi and wanted to build a quiet life with him. But the version of Rachel I saw, confident, glamorous, exuding self-assurance from every inch of her designer ensemble, left no doubt in my mind. In her world, self always came first. What she didn't expect was how directly I'd call her out. No drama. No pleading. Just brutal clarity. She stared at me in silence, not blinking, not responding, calculating. And I simply kept speaking, calm and detached, like someone offering weathered advice to a stranger. You need to think carefully before tying yourself to Levi. He's not just divorcing me, he's trying to steal a house paid for entirely by his daughter. A man that cold, that greedy, what kind of future do you think he's offering you? Rachel took another sip of her coffee, her expression unreadable, as if working through a spreadsheet in her mind. Then finally, after a long pause, she looked up and said, Mrs. Mitchell, don't you think you're wasting your breath? There's really nothing between Levi and me. I heard what she was really saying. I believe you, I replied slowly. I believe that even if there was something between you two, there won't be again. Because if there is, you'll find out exactly what a mother is capable of when her child is being wronged. See, this wasn't just about Levi being callous and trying to take something that didn't belong to him. It was about the story it would write into Lauren's heart. If a man could betray his own daughter, twist the law in his favor, and run off into the sunset with another woman, what would that teach her about justice? About loyalty? About the price of kindness? If Levi hadn't gone silent, I probably wouldn't have come to warn Rachel. But his silence, his cowardly retreat, forced me to act. A few days later, Lauren called me. Her voice was drained. Dad said no to the $50,000. She didn't know that at the time I was already on the phone with a real estate agent. I was preparing to rent out the unfinished home she'd paid for. Because I couldn't count on Rachel listening and I needed a plan B. On the call, I reassured Lauren gently and added, if your dad tries to reach out again, don't respond. No matter what he says, don't engage. A week passed. Winter arrived. The chill bit through every layer of clothing. That's when Levi finally called. His name lit up the screen and I stared at it for a long moment. Was this about Rachel? Or the house? Grace, how have you been? His tone was uncharacteristically soft. He even asked if I was home. I was on the balcony watering the last of the fall flowers, my voice calm and unmoved. I'm fine. Just been waiting on you to come back and finalize the divorce. I can come right over. We should talk this through in person. Sorry, I said, unable to hold back a smile. But since this house is part of the divorce proceedings, I've already had the locks changed. You won't be able to get in. Let's meet somewhere else. I could only imagine his face in that moment. The next day we met at the lake behind the university. We used to come here often when we both taught at Newberry. Walks after breakfast, casual conversation, lesson plans, staff meetings, years that blurred into routine. There were probably thousands of footsteps of ours etched into the soil around that lake. So the choice to meet there? Deliberate. Poetic. I looked at Levi, still with that jet black hair still polished. I gestured toward the eastern edge of the lake. Remember that view? I asked. That's the direction our house was. We'd stand here after walks just to look that way. Life wasn't easy then. Work stress, arguments. But every time we looked toward home we remembered who was waiting for us. We remembered Lauren. It made everything worth it. The view had never been spectacular. The skyline was ordinary, trees in the way. But back then it held meaning. It anchored us. No matter how long I stared, all I saw was nothing. Levi pressed his lips into a tight line, looking like a schoolboy caught doing something wrong. Too proud to apologize, too guilty to meet my eyes. He didn't answer right away. Instead he followed the direction I pointed toward, staring off quietly, his thoughts impossible to read. But I wasn't about to wait for him to catch up. So, I said flatly, have you figured out how you want to handle the divorce? Levi shoved his hands into his pockets and looked down at the gravel under his shoes. He said he didn't want a divorce. That all the things he said before were out of anger. That I'd misunderstood everything, he never cheated. Then he pulled out his phone and scrolled to a chat thread. Some screenshots with the owner of a sleepwear boutique. He zoomed in. Look, he said, this is the message I sent when I ordered the lingerie. See the height and weight? That's you, Grace. You misunderstood. I was upset that day. That's all. I glanced down at the screen. Sure enough, it was the same store. And yes, the measurements were mine, not Rachel's. Had he shown me this when I first found that order, maybe I would have believed him. But now he still thought I didn't know how to navigate an app, didn't understand how to check a shopping record, didn't realize that deleted order messages don't magically reappear in the interface. The screen he showed me was fake. I met his shifty gaze with a cold smile. Oh, so even if I did misunderstand you, that's all it takes to cancel a divorce now? Funny. You were the one who always told Lauren to mean what she says. What happened to keeping your word? Levi froze, clearly not expecting me to hold the line. That's when I dropped the real news. Oh, by the way, Lauren's house? I rented it out. 10-year lease. The deed was still at home. And thankfully I had a spare set of keys. Levi had left in a hurry, arrogant as ever, assuming he knew the law inside and out. He didn't even bother taking the title with him. He also had an image to maintain. He hated public embarrassment. No matter how bad things were between us, he always tried to keep up the appearance of dignity in front of others. So if the lease went through smoothly and the new tenant, my cousin, moved in, it wouldn't matter if Rachel had a change of heart. Levi wouldn't be able to reclaim control of that house without getting his hands dirty in public. He stared at me in disbelief. That's not possible. My name's on the deed. You can't rent it out without my consent. He wasn't wrong. If I'd gone through an agency, I would have needed his signature too. But I hadn't. I rented it directly to my cousin under a private agreement. My cousin who always believed Levi and I had a perfect marriage. Who wouldn't question anything if I offered the place at a discount and handed over a signed lease myself. Sure, Levi could make a scene. But if he did, the entire divorce, every sordid detail would be dragged out into the open. I turned to him, steady and calm. Levi, I might have been a housewife for 2 years, but I haven't gone senile. For over 2 decades you acted like I wasn't as smart as you. But this time, you underestimated me. If you dare make a fuss, I'll make every detail of your affair public. Screenshots, timeline, receipts. You think you'll still be the respectable professor after that? He blinked hard, stunned. His pupils widened, the mask crumbling. Was it you who told Rachel? Yes, it was me. But I didn't lie to her. I just told her the truth. I let the words settle before continuing, one slow cut after another. You still don't get it, do you? You lost because you're arrogant. You thought you could fake a tantrum, bluff your way through a divorce and walk off hand in hand with Rachel. You thought your legal knowledge gave you the upper hand, so you left the deed at home, and gave me just enough time to lock you out. You thought I'd believe whatever explanation you tossed my way because in your mind I've always been a little slower than you. But worst of all, you actually thought a woman like Rachel, beautiful, successful, wanted to spend the rest of her life scraping by with a man clinging to retirement benefits and a nursing bill. Every word hit its mark. The swagger, the arrogance, gone. Now that Rachel had left, his backup plan had fallen apart. And without her? He didn't dare test me. Not anymore. As soon as I got back to my brother James's house, my phone rang. Lauren again. Mom, Dad just sent me a bunch of texts. He's apologizing non-stop. What happened? Come to your uncle's place tonight, I said. I'll explain everything then. After I hung up, James sat down on the sofa beside me, his tone low and measured. Grace, if Levi's admitting fault now, maybe just let it go. He's a man, you know how they are. They screw up sometimes. If he's willing to come home, isn't that enough? I appreciated him opening his home to me these past few weeks. Truly I did. But I couldn't pretend to agree with him. Levi had made it very clear that he was ready to burn every bridge. I wasn't about to let him walk away unscathed just because he changed his mind. I looked at James, calm but firm. You've seen how I treated Levi's mother all these years, haven't you? Every winter, when her arthritis flared up and she couldn't cook, it was me hauling food to her house, washing her laundry, scrubbing her floors. Over and over. Without complaint. And in the end? She turned her back on Lauren. Claimed she was too old to get involved. Didn't lift a finger to stop her son from tearing his own family apart. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Well, I'm tired now. I won't be taking care of her anymore. I hope that's okay. Levi made his move. I simply returned serve. Fair and square. James handed me a glass of water, trying to soften the tension. That's not what I meant. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm on your side. I worry about you being alone if you go through with this divorce. Alone? I'm 55, not 75. My energy is fine. And I've saved most of my income over the past 2 decades. I have more in my accounts than I'll probably ever need. When the time comes, I'll find someone to help take care of me. That won't be a problem. By the time Lauren arrived, James and I were discussing a potential job opening at the university library. I stood to greet her, brought her inside and sat her beside me. Then gently but clearly I told her everything. Lauren, do you know why I handled things the way I did? Your whole life I've taught you to be kind, to be forgiving. But some lines should never be crossed. And this time your father didn't just cross mine, he trampled yours too. I took her hand and looked her in the eye. All the solutions you tried involved leaning on someone else. But sometimes we only have ourselves to rely on. I've done everything I could to protect you, but I'll only do it this once. If this ever happens to you, sweetheart, you'll have to handle it yourself. I paused. God willing, it never does. Her eyes welled up with tears. Thank you, Mom. I mean it. I gently patted the back of her hand. A smile touched my lips, but in my chest uncertainty stirred. What did she really think of me now? Would she see me as too harsh? Would she think I should have forgiven Levi now that he was sorry? Some wounds, once carved, never truly fade. I couldn't say whether she'd ever forgive her father. But as for me, I had no regrets. I'd done right by this family. By my daughter. By the mother-in-law who never appreciated me. And most importantly, by myself. I was at peace. James glanced between us, then quietly excused himself, leaving Lauren and me alone in the living room. She sniffled and wiped at her nose. Mom, what are you going to do next? I smiled and handed her the envelope of rent I'd collected from my cousin. I think I'm going to apply for the librarian job at the university. I've always loved books. It feels like a good fit. And your father? If he wants to drag his feet on the divorce, let him. I'm not waiting. But make no mistake, this marriage is over. By the time winter settled in fully, I had landed the librarian job. It suited me. Quiet, organized, surrounded by books and my own thoughts. No one demanding dinner. No one calling me in the middle of the night because their knee hurt or they forgot their medication. Meanwhile, Levi started showing up. He'd come by the library, sometimes daily, sometimes more than once a day. No matter how many students were around, he'd corner me by the front desk or at the reading tables, apologizing, begging, refusing to sign the divorce papers. I treated him like he wasn't even there. Calm, distant, polite when necessary, but emotionally absent, like he was just another noise in the background. If he wouldn't grant me the divorce, fine. Let him suffer the waiting. I wasn't the one being tortured by silence and rejection. Eventually he stopped coming. I assumed he'd finally given in and was ready to finalize things. But when I called him about the paperwork, I learned the real reason. He was at his mother's house. So was his sister. Winter had locked in, and his mother, who could hardly move in the cold, was now his full-time responsibility. Without me there to run errands, deliver meals, and bathe her, the siblings were overwhelmed. His sister snatched the phone mid-call. Her voice was like glass on metal, shrill and grating. "Grace, how can you be so heartless? My mom's over 80. You can't even come visit once." I smiled into the receiver. "Levi and I are getting divorced," I said coolly. "Why would I be the one taking care of her?" My hands were still red from cooking, but my heart had gone numb. This wasn't guilt. This was clarity. There was yelling in the background, Levi and his sister arguing over the phone. Somewhere in the chaos, a frail voice broke through, nasal and trembling. "Grace. Grace. I haven't seen you in so long." It was Levi's mother. I'd heard enough. I hung up. Then I texted Levi and told him to meet me the next day to finalize the divorce. When the paperwork was done, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. To his credit, Levi didn't contest anything. No fight over the house. He knew better. I moved back in, changed the locks, installed a security door. My life finally was mine again. I didn't expect to run into Rachel at the library. She looked radiant as ever, like a girl in her 20s dressed in luxury. White mink coat, designer heels, not a hair out of place. The moment she saw me, her eyes darted sideways and she turned to bolt. But I didn't let her. "Relax," I called after her. "I'm not here to warn you off. I'm just here for some peace and a job that keeps my hands busy. Oh, and Levi and I? Divorced. You're free to have him if that's what you want. Just don't get too comfortable. My daughter's house won't be part of your love story." Rachel froze. She turned slowly, clearly caught off guard, and gave a small, sheepish smile. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry. There was never anything between me and Levi. And there never will be. Really, I mean that. I'm sorry." Her eyes shimmered with something fragile. Maybe shame. Maybe regret. I didn't respond. Just kept organizing the shelf in front of me. She stood there awkwardly, twisting her hands, eyes darting around like she didn't belong anymore. Then, with another hushed, "I'm sorry," she turned and walked toward the exit. The white coat wrapped tight around her, pristine and delicate, almost glowing under the warm lights of the library. I watched her retreating figure fade into the distance. And just like that, the bitterness I'd carried through the war of divorce, the tension, the betrayal, the grief, melted away with her.